Yes, well, good morning. It's or afternoon wherever you are. It's December 4th, and Wayne is not going to be joining us, and Joe is hasn't we haven't heard from Joe. Manu's on the road and may be joining us if he can along the way. And we're here as a group, and our objective is to go through the Cosmometry book. We're starting on page 107 on the chapter 18, features of dynamic wholeness. And um, I have a couple of thoughts left over from last week. So, good morning, welcome, and how are you feeling? And what do you anticipate getting out of today?
Um, uh, as usual, going through this book, I'm getting more and more, into the science of it. I know we do get very excited. I hated science in school, just to be clear. When you get introduced to things and we read things that are actually out there in science, um, it starts to get very exciting, right? So, I got a lot out of some novels I read, including literature books. There's a beautiful story called Flowers of Algernon, and I hope I'm getting the pronunciation of the name correct. And there's science in there, right? So, and then and then there are other books. Wait, let me think of the name. Uh, like oh my God, there was they talk about quantum physics, right? So for the first time in there, I had an inkling of what quantum physics is, and it's fascinating, right? So now the more we delve into cosmometry, and I realize that this is physics. We generally don't think in terms of physics, chemistry, or biology, right? When especially for us who are non-science people. But the more we delve into this, and I'm looking at this, wow, this is physics. This is physics at its most fascinating, right? So the whole like there were chapters just before the torus, and it kind of got a bit too technical. That the wonder of it didn't come through for me, right? But the minute we headed down this path, the flow and the torus, my God, the whole fascination with physics really it it just like hit me in the face, literally hit me in the face. Um, so that yeah, I'm looking forward to what else is going to be introduced as we move forward in this chapter. Yeah. And yes, Richard, how do you feel and what would you like to take away today?
Well, I'm actually, this morning I'm feeling my life has gone sideways. Uh, and I don't really know why.
Well, there's
so,
evidence. There's evidence, Richard.
yeah. So maybe I'll get straightened out in this session, and maybe it's a bit like Anne. All of a sudden, something will turn and things will upright. But yeah, it's. I mean, I have to come at this in somewhat the way Anne is, and what's really fascinated me with me over the years around quantum is this idea of wholeness and the idea that we're moving away from the search for a basic building block, um, and that the quantum sort of understandings apply both to the minute, the real micro, but they also apply, if you want, to the cosmos out, which means that it applies to us as well. And one of my kind of big breakthroughs in terms of if you want to call it the integration, was when I learned about David Bohm's work and David Peat, his contemporary physicist colleague, And their time with the Blackfoot Indian Nation here in southern Alberta. And out of that, David Peat wrote the book Blackfoot Physics. So he really tried to take Western science's domination, if you want. Yes, that one. And integrate it with the indigenous ways of knowing. And out of that same southern Alberta group, Blackfoot people, there was another colleague who had come from the US, Wisconsin, I believe. Her name was Pam Colorado. And she was the founder of what she called World Indigenous Science Network. And she did that in 1988, actually here at the University of Calgary. And she deliberately used the word science in the name to move away from the notion that science was one thing and indigenous ways of knowing was something else, but not really science. And so she's coined the idea that science is broad-based and cuts across more than one kind of culture or discipline. So that's my excitement with this, and especially with the way David Bohm put forward the idea of the ontology of undivided wholeness and divided wholeness being the reductionist science of the what I keep calling the pre-20th century science. Other people call it early modern science. And undivided wholeness, which is the kind of thing that Fuller was into, and it makes so much sense to me in the way in which my discipline is tried to see itself, and not always doing very well because it gets tied into the old science. But this idea of the ontology of undivided wholeness is what really keeps me coming back to these kinds of discussions and other discussions along the line of learning more about Fuller's work and those who are related to it, such as Marshall Lefferts' work. And just on another group that I'm on Saturday mornings every 2 weeks, there's a fellow from Michigan. His name is Mark Wagner, and he was saying last week that he's doing some direct work with Marshall Leffert right now on AI and that sort of thing. So that's quite interesting, the crisscrossing of people's interests. Anyway, that's how I'm feeling, and just wanting to get more and more out of these kinds of dialogues. And Susan, how are you feeling, and what's your expectation?
Well, I'm feeling grateful for all of you showing up, and happy for the connection, looking for that recharge. And as you're speaking, I was flashing back to some time that I spent with Sadhguru. One of the things I just loved is when he said that all facts should be true, but not all truth are facts. And he explained to us that the Hindus had physics figured out, and their stories with the different characters and their wives that were showing the duality, so that in each couple there was a duality, were 4,000-year-old physics, quantum physics, and the rest of us were just catching up. So I do love that, even, and I think some of Jesus's best teaching came through parables. So best understandings came through stories. So hang in there. It's there. And I love that people we'll come at things from a different discipline. That's one of the biggest draws to come to a group like this, is to see how each of you is looking at things and understanding things and integrating things. So today I'm just definitely down for some more appreciation of the natural world, of thought, of consideration. I want to stay in that optimistic place because I think that's where we have the most power to impact, assist, and change. Steve, how are you feeling and what would you like to get out of today?
Well, I got a notice from Joe that he won't be able to be with us today. Manu is traveling, so hopefully he's safe and will join us. And I'm missing Wayne a bit. I feel greedy because we're going to move ahead, and maybe Wayne will watch the video, and maybe he'll comment next week as he starts. As I feel like I'm going to comment on last week's conversation right now. I've had a couple of major epiphanies, and one of them deals with the concept of language. I was expressing this a little bit to Richard during the week. I think on Saturday's call, we had a chance to talk. We ended up not having a Saturday call, but we had a great conversation. And I want to talk about this language issue and how very critical it is that exactly the right word is used always. And what I'm envisioning is I'm envisioning a world that exists on like a sheet of paper. It's a flat plane. I'm just going to use a 2D example of the world and take that piece of paper and then push it together so that it becomes like a piece of corrugated whatever. And it's like a sine wave. And it seems to me that language on a flat piece of paper, the words will say exactly what is going on the piece of paper. But if you take that corrugated piece of paper and you put a board across the top of it, it only touches reality at the peaks of those corrugations, and there are big valleys. And if someone doesn't use the right word, when I don't use the right word, I like skip from peak to peak to peak to peak, and I'm missing all the good stuff in between. And if I allow my brain to do that in any instance, my brain will tend to do it in every instance. And so it creates, if I allow myself to speak about the sunrise or sunset, I allow myself to create a space of non-reality. It's a magical thinking. And if I allow my brain to do that, it'll do it all the time, because the brain, all it cares about is sustaining life, and which means eat and have sex, and there's more to life than just eating and having sex. It's words. It's words defining reality the way they really are. And of course, someone has to sit and not believe everything one hears and one sees at its first appearance. One must ponder. And that's exactly what's happened with me with this Taurus thing. I mean, when we first did precession back how many years ago with Synergetics, 3 or 4 years ago anyway, I really thought I got it. I mean, I invented a mnemonic peg for it, Soviet P, and Soviet means spin, orbit, V means vector, I is inspansion and expansion, E or I is, gosh, now I don't even know what it is. It's been such a while since I looked at it.
In and out.
In and out. Thank you very much, Richard. And then E is expansion and inspansion, my word. And then T is torque and reverse torque. And then this concept of precession includes an equilibrium and equanimity. And that's where the P comes in, PEE. And I thought I was really getting it. And I thought I knew what a Taurus was. I mean, I'd been pondering Hopf vibration. I really, and I ought to, I'll bring up a slide of Hopf vibration here, but the whole concept of, hey, Hopf vibration is the ultimate Taurus, and I think I got it. But in this Lefort book last week on page 104 and 105, I'm going to show you a picture of the Hopf vibration, and I'll also show you a picture of the wine dance thing from the Philippines, a traditional dance from the Philippines, just like Richard was talking about the Iroquois physics and Susan was talking about the Hindus, you know, even culture, I mean, the Native Americans, the Indonesians had some semblance of this, of reality, and it was in their traditions, as Richard and Susan were saying. And it boggles my mind here. I'm going to show you the hop vibration because to me, this is a really cool iteration of a torus. I'm also going to show you the wine dance picture. So I'm going to share my screen here, if my screen will actually function. I had a new computer. It was working fine, except it wasn't interfaced with Google Docs, and it had some other problems. And I had my 60-day guarantee up, and so I turned it back in. Now I'm back on my old computer, and I'm struggling. So it's sucking up system resources. And this was from the wine dance video about the 720 degrees. And this is the advanced part of the wine dance video. This is kind of like a hop vibration. This is showing electron spinning, which is like the wine dance idea with 720 degrees. So that was a really cool iteration. This is every fiber. This is a four-dimensional entity where every fiber is created of little spheres. All these little lines back here, these white lines.
We're not actually seeing a picture.
Okay, well, good.
At least oh, there we go.
There.
Okay, good. Are you seeing the wine dance or are you seeing the hop vibration?
Hop.
Okay, good. So each one of these little white lines back here represent these fibers in this fiberation. It's not vibration, it's fibration. And each one of these fibers are composed of spheres that are, in fact, its very own hop vibration. So this thing is a fractal of itself, and it's folding through itself in multiple dimensions. I'll show you the, hopefully I'll be able to show you the, here is the, here's the wine dance. This is the electron doing 720 degrees. And if this were spinning, it would. So this was my idea of a torus. But Lefert has, and I used this as the cover on the video last week, has this concept that's so profound because the precession has hemispheres as well. And none of those other graphics show the hemispheric idea. And of course, Lefert puts out a universe, a galaxy, a planet, a tree, a human, an acorn, a cell, a proton, a Planck spherical unit, and then its toruses all the way down concept that came up, which is the fractal nature of a thing inside of itself. And this is showing the fractal nature of the torus in itself. And it just so happens, as I pointed out last week, that this happens to show the colors of the 7 chakras or energy centers of a human being. This is the root center. This is the sacral center. Here's the solar plexus. Here's the heart chakra. Here's the visual chakra. Here's the, or the throat chakra. I'm sorry, I went too fast. Here's the visual chakra or third eye. And then here's the crown chakra. And how all these parts are interrelated, constantly relating to each other. And so this idea of Soviet P is just an oversimplification. And I think if it's so obvious as I look at this, water going down a drain, it would have been so easy for someone to show me a hurricane or, a tornado cone. And I learned about them in school, but never learned that that's the way energy flows. It's all around us. And if I've always thought of things static, like in Newtonian physics, little ball, hits the one ball that echoes through the other balls and out pops the other ball, this idea of cause and effect. I learned cause and effect. It's almost two-dimensional. And yet energy and life is so beautifully interwoven. people interwoven. You and I interwoven. Wayne's not here, Joe's not here, Manu's not here, Raffers not here, Kelly's not, and we're interwoven all the way down. It boggles my mind. So I'm thank you for letting me blither.
Steve,
but
before you use that,
Okay,
I don't know if
good.
I don't know if you remember the time we were working with Fred and we went through and we made shapes and we
Yeah.
got that Mobius band.
Yeah.
The central canal there in your torus
Yeah.
is a Mobius band.
Yeah. And then, in fact, that's reflected by the hemispherical aspect of the torus. That Mobius band facilitates that hemisphere.
So the
I
other
mean,
thing that I want to just pop in here, and I speak with my patients about it all the time, and I had to like try and rein in my own frustration, which I hear a little bit in your voice. I have a dictum that all models are false,
yeah.
full stop. Some models are helpful.
Yeah.
And after I'd spent so many years learning about the Bohr model of the atom, and I I did all my chemistry equations and everything with it, you know, through college. And then you get to quantum and you realize it's an oversimplification. It's not the way it really is. And there was part of me that wanted to be really super frustrated. Like, why did I invest so much in that model? And yet it facilitated me being able to move up one notch on the upward spiral of being able to see things in greater depth. And so a lot of times when I have to talk to my patients about, hey, you know, there's a lot of different models for assessing breast cancer risk assessment, right? Just, you know, and it's a scary thing if somebody starts telling you, oh, you've got this elevated risk. But I'm like, hey, what we can also do is we can use it against the insurance companies to make sure they pay for your MRI. So we can turn that around and make sure that we're not getting lost or overcome by the model. And so as much like even all this greater depth of modeling that Nassim Harriman and Lefferts have done, it's still a model.
Yeah.
It's still a derivative. And I know if I had Manu here, he'd be very much on it. It's like we're taking a point somewhere in between two steps in reality. And when we, like, it was so nice for me when he defined a geometric derivative. And that was something that's been another big aha for me this year, was saying, okay, you take that tetrahedron and you divide each of those lines in half and then connect those points. That's your first derivative. Do it again. It's your next derivative. It's how you build a fractal in both, and then integrate it back up. And it's so if you notice on that scale of that he had listed for what these things are in toruses all the way down, a human is at the exact freaking center of that relative scale. And when I went to a retreat for the Resonance Science Foundation, which has been a few years now, they had a biophysicist, William Brown, who literally spent some real time going on and on about the fact that on the fractal scale of wholeness, from PSU out to universe, humans are at the exact middle of that scale in terms of fractal iterations. And that maybe this is one of the reasons, like if we need a reason to feel special, but we are an integration point in this ongoing experiment, I guess Bucky would say scenario, that is universe.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, beautiful. Are you complete?
I am.
Did everybody see the Mobius band samples I threw up there for a second? Yeah, good. and this idea about being in the center, I've had kind of a vision about this. Let me see if I can, with this concept of inspansion, let's see if I can find something on it. Because if one envisions these models that I showed you from Lefert, that showed the concentric energy centers, showing the human energy range. If you put that right in the middle, and you take the, let me see if I can, Mobius. I'm okay. I'm calling inspansion. My computer is just so. I know some things I can do, and I thought I had a solution that I was working on last night, but it did not become a solution. But if you take this Lefert thing, this kind of shows what Susan was talking about. Here we go. I'm just going to share my screen because it doesn't allow me the versatility, but right now I don't have computer research to be as versatile as I like to be anyway. My battery's running low, because I took it off the line last night in order to, okay, now that should work. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Now I don't know which one I'm doing. But if you put this right in the middle, and now I'm going to invite you to take this human iteration of Tori and allow this to be the expansion of the universe above. Let this cone represent the expansion of the universe above. So up here is universe, next is galaxy, next is a planet, next is a tree. Put the human right in the middle. And then if you want to go down and say, here's the acorn, here's the cell, here's the proton, here's the PSU. This is expansion and this is inspansion. And just as the further one looks out, the bigger the universe gets. And the further one looks in, the bigger, I'll say it differently. The further one looks out, the bigger the macro gets. And the further one looks in, the bigger the micro gets. So it's just such a beautiful revelation. And I've got to be 78 years old in order to see that. How frustrating and how delightful. What if I'd have died? What if I'd have died without seeing that picture? Anyway, so I'm so grateful for all the inspiration you guys share and your insights. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah. Well, my quick comment on this is that it very quickly shows the, if you want, the falseness of this objective or observer separate from the observed. And when you see it this way, you realize that the human who claims to be the detached observer is in the thick of it, is in the middle of it, is he can't get out of being part of the observed. And so, as Susan's talking about, in terms of the falsity of models, whoever taught us the model that said the observer is outside the observed has kind of duped us for a long, long time. And when you see the model the way we've just seen it and the way both of you have talked about it, it's like, that's simple. You could have told me that when I was in grade 1 and I would have got it. So you're lucky if you figured it out by the time you're 78. I'm 83 and still just getting there. So there's lots of time for all of us.
Yeah. My 10-day sits are amazing because in that whole sitting, one soon learns that one is observing even one's own body as part of this whole process of universe. As I sit, I could have been told, hey, when you look over here to see this book, can you see your nose on the way? Take a look and see if you can see your nose on the way. It's you right there in the middle allowing this book to happen. You're part of this book. And so the observer is absolutely integrated into the observation, you know? And then when one studies psychology, and when one studies medical hypnoanalysis and how everybody has different belief systems about different behaviors, it's so infinitely obvious that every human being is a different filter of observing whatever it is. And it's a miracle that we both see the same thing, or at least can profess to see the same thing at the same time. And I think I'm willing to trust that premise, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure
Well,
if the,
this
I'm not
this
sure if
is what
is this green? And is it really purple? But I think it's green because consensus says this is green. I mean, I don't know what I'm seeing here, but I know that some people like green and some people don't. And it seemed to me if we all saw the same thing, we'd like it or not. Go ahead, Richard.
well, this is what I was trying with students for a long time in terms of this idea of um, the four-dimensionality. And so we are in a three-dimensional space, like a room with height, width, length, and then we're in the room as an observer. But then trying to say, okay, when I look at you, and we can use this kind of example, I see you and I see behind you, which you can't see. And so I can see more than you can see in that kind of dialogue. But then when you're the observer and I'm the observed, then it reverses, and you can see what's in behind me that I can't see. And what I used to do with students too was to say, okay, now move. You know, move either, you know, one chair over or to the other side of the room, or just move 1 centimeter. And then realize that that three-dimensional room, that's the same for all of us. We're sitting in this room with the walls and the widths and the chairs. We all think is the same 3D room. It's not. Each one of us is seeing it a little bit differently, and the teacher-student kind of relationship is constantly switching. So when I'm the observer and seeing what's going on with a particular student or all of the students, that's different than when the student sitting somewhere looks at all the other students and the instructor in the same room, but it's a very different room for them. And the other one that I tried to work with was the idea that a lot of instructors have had the mindset that says, when you come into my classroom, you're in my classroom and nothing else matters. You have to pay attention to what's going on in this hour. And I realized that, I mean, that's just not right. I have no way of knowing what a student did from the time they got up till the time they traveled to in this case, the university, and got into a classroom as to what was going on in their life. And to say that they have to shut all that off and just pay attention to this three-dimensional room and what's going on in it, that's nuts. And yet, that's what I think we have been somehow or another processed into believing that you can actually separate the observer from the observed and treat that as a model of reality, which it is so far from the truth, as Susan was talking about it. Yeah. And I like
Richard,
that idea that, what'd you say, that truths are backed up by facts, but all truths are.
So all facts should be true, but
Oh,
not
right,
all truth are facts.
right.
So,
Yeah,
Richard,
yes.
you were talking about looking behind and perspective. That was in my background. That one of the muertos. And there are things that kind of remind us to look deeper or understand that we've got a perspective that's not complete.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that your example of perspective is a real good example of convex. It'd be a good metaphor of convex because what's behind me I can't see, and what's in front of me I can see, and that seems to be a fairly good, at least for teaching the concept. When I was in my last sit, I had this amazing. There's a paradigm that Goenka, S.N. Goenka, he's the guy who founded this Vipassana Center group that I go to. And he teaches the concept of somebody who was a big physicist came to Vipassana back in the 60s and met Goenka's teacher, and Anne just went away. Hopefully she'll come back. And I wonder if I have it set to show.
I'm here.
Okay, good.
I just turn off the camera. That's it.
Okay, really good. I'm glad. Thank you. I evidently have mine set up so that if there's nobody in the camera, the whole thing doesn't show. I'm going to see what I can do about fixing that. Anyway, he talks about an example of what one does when one sits. One sits in Vipassana and one examines every tissue, every sensation in every part of the body. I mean, imagine getting up at 4:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night with some reasonable breaks. It's not like a prison camp, or it's not total drudgery. But imagine scanning your body and just observing any sensation in the brain, in the skin, on the hair, inside the brain, the breath going through the body, the blood pulsing through the body, the food going through the body. I mean, you're just examining every sensation all the way down through that. And such clarity comes out of it. I mean, it's amazing the clarity that comes out of that. And there was this physicist who examined it, and he couldn't figure it out. So he went back, and evidently this guy was involved in metallurgy. He was designing guidance mechanisms for intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they were developing these different kinds of metals. And what they do to purify metal is they take a ring of metal that's pure, and they take that ring of metal, they magnetize it, and then they go and they take a rod of the other metal, and they just scan it over this metal. And by doing that, somehow this pure ring, magnetized ring, pulls atoms out of the rod, purifying the rod. And this physicist came up with the idea that, hey, what I'm doing is I'm taking my mind and I'm becoming aware of my body, and I'm purifying my body as I do the scan. Now, there's a reason. Oh, and so that's a really good metaphor. But what I got this last Vipassana was I saw myself, the scan started dropping down over me. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, if my awareness just stays above me, it's like a light in the room, and I'm casting a shadow, and I can't see in the shadow. If the light moves over here, my shadow moves over there. There's always a perspective based on my lighting as to some aspect of my reality that I'm going to be able to not see because of the shadow, and I'm going to be able to see because of my focus. And so then it moved around the room, and I saw this shadow moving around, and I'm thinking of all the things I miss in my life because I'm not focused on everything all at once. And which I can do, by the way, by moving to the center of me. It just blew me away. And it's kind of the inverse of what you're talking about with your chair concept. So I'm going to add your chair concept, Richard, to my concept of the spotlight, a purification concept. Okay, really good. Well, there we go. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Well, here's one that is sort of a takeoff on the precise language, and because of basically because of the current legislative debate in the UK around assisted dying. I got into this because of the medical assistance in dying, the MAID legislation here in Canada. And what's interesting about the UK debate is that they defined assisted dying in a very narrow sort of way. And they've kept the idea of assisted suicide illegal, unless it's in this little sort of constraint sort of approval. And the approval is that the medical person can give the required medication drug to the patient, the person, and they have to self-administer, which is quite more restrictive in some other jurisdictions where you can have that happen, or you can give the person, the doctor, if you want, the permission, you administer it, which for me is what I've called consensual euthanasia. But what was being made clear is that this new UK definition is not assisted suicide. And so I'm back to this position of saying, well, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's got to be a duck. And so if I am doing something to myself, by definition, it falls into this suicide idea. If you assist me in some way, then it's assisted suicide. Then I started thinking of the other ways that we are classified as death. And I got into this so what is natural death? Well, now I realize when I looked it up is that natural death is something that's not external to sort of a natural process or a disease process. And so by not being external means it wasn't an accident, it wasn't suicide, and it wasn't homicide. And that was helpful. But then I started thinking of in a natural death, and this is where get Susan's take on this, is because I started to say, well, wait a minute, maybe the real operative here is the concept of assisted, almost in a verb way, to assist. And so someone can assist me to die by suicide, and a murderer can assist me to die by inflicting a wound on me. And cancer can assist somebody in dying by invading one's body. And all of a sudden I'm saying, to be precise, maybe everything that results in dying has an assistance quality to it. And then what Susan was saying earlier, that on the flip side, you can end up saying, well, wait a minute, this diagnosis, even though the model is wrong, it can assist us in getting the insurance companies to pay. Or if I give you medicine of some kind, it can assist you in living longer, or it'll assist you in getting rid of your headache, or whatever it might be. So the preciseness is in the verb to assist. And then we look at it. So do we give it? Does it matter whether cancer assists us in dying? If it doesn't matter, then just let it happen. If it does matter, then we do all the kinds of things that we do to try and learn more about it and study it and find different ways that can be helpful. But that's an assistance activity as well. So I throw that out to sort of see what others think about this idea of the preciseness in the dying process has to do with what assists us to get to that dying place, whether it's early in our lives or late in our lives, whether it's natural or just the aging process, or is it something else that assists us to either live a little longer or to interrupt what we thought was going to be a little longer.
I think I'd like to say something about that. When I was teaching in the college about back in the 90s, so there was a passage I used to do with my students called The Right to Die. And back then they were already talking about how hard it is to die, actually. You know, you've got machines keeping us alive, etc. So the whole idea of assisted dying, it put, like, before that it was so clear what is considered euthanasia or suicide and stuff like that, right? But then that was back in the 90s itself, where you have all the mechanical equipment and so on for us to, for medical equipment, etc. And so this whole idea was already being discussed even in Malaysia back in the 90s, So today, I actually have not looked at it 30 years later and really re-examine this whole thing. Maybe it's no longer about assisted dying or, the right to die. Maybe it's something else now. I don't know. This is something to think about. But yeah, that kind of reminded me what you just said there, Richard. That's
Cool. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, we've used a good hour here having a great discussion. Shall we proceed with our topic at hand? Let's see here. I know I have this book open someplace. There it is. Now I just got to find it on Zoom.
So Steve, the very last little quote on page 105, our last thing, it says the self in a toroidal universe can be both separate and connected with everything else, which is kind of like everything we've been.
Okay. Yeah, it's like what we've been talking about, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gradually getting there. I just hate to be too aggressive with this thing.
Yeah.
Oh, see, page 105. Oh my gosh. It opened at the right place, I thought. Okay. And all the page numbers are, of course, at the bottom of the page. 77, 8, 9, 10. That's 80. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 90. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see how close I am at clicking.
Super close.
There's 100, so 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Woohoo!
That's 105.
Okay, and here we go. 104. 105. All right, there it is. The self in a toroidal universe can be both separate and connected with everything else. Arthur Young. I don't know how it can be separated. I'm not sure how it can be separated. But I have sat in Vipassana for 10 days and experienced some sense of isolation. Any other comments or questions?
Well, for me, the simple answer to that, for me, modeling wise, is what I've used as the H relationship, the letter H. When you have two this has to do with co-determination too, but when you have two come together and then they get connected, you have the interconnection, you have what in the marriage world, the ceremony says, you know, two have become one, which was really another way of saying that one has got buried into the other. Um, and but the other way is to say that in that togetherness, the upright of the H remains, so that I keep my independence and the other person keeps their independence. And then there's a togetherness that's different. But so you can be connected to each other in this case and separate. And so you can be active in the crossbar, or you can be active on one side or the other, or both sides for that matter. You can both be independent at the same time that you're connected. And anyway, that's how I immediately responded to that statement.
Richard, I had an epiphany about your H. And let's see if I did any graphics on it, because I've had a couple of visions about Richard's H. I guess I didn't. I'm not sure what I'm sharing right now. Am I sharing the book?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sharing the book. So I'm going to move over here, and I'll just share my screen, and then we'll see if I can get Richard's H to show up here. Bucky, interrelationships, and Richard Ramsey's H. What I did was I loved your H, and I connected it with Bucky's ABC. This has, see if I can get rid of that. Here we go. Shoot. Oh shit, I just destroyed the wrong one. Here we go. It just show you how delayed my there we go. But what I saw over here is, and I don't have it, so I'm going to leave this on and I'm going to work on this H. Okay. But this is the beginning of your H, isn't that right, Richard?
Yes.
Yeah. And these are two people. And this little line right here represents energy of this connection. And the way I saw this was it was a chakra connection. So I want to take my meditation guy. I'm going to put him here with a chakra going around here. Then I'm going to put another meditation guy over here with a chakra going over here, and then connecting at each of those energy centers. So this A-B connection is not just a linear one-dimensional connection. It's got 7 different dimensions to it, because my brain relates to your heart, relates to your physical body. You relate to my body, to different parts of me, and I want to demonstrate that in this H. So I thought I'd done work on it, Richard, and I haven't, but I will.
How many chakra rings?
There are 7.
7. Okay.
There's 7 energy centers, and I'm going to take my meditation guy, and I'm going to meditation man, and I'm going to stack him on there and put 2, one to the left and one to the right, and then show these Bucky connections in all these different energy levels, because it's not just a simple tetrahedron. It's a complex fractaled
Right.
relationship.
And if you do what you do and use that formula, you end up there's just a simple connections. There's 91 between those 14.
Oh, wonderful. 7 on one side, 7 on the other side, and you use the n squared minus 2 over 2, and you got 4. How many?
Yeah. Well, you get 91 sort of just connections, or if you multiply it by 2, you get 100 82 interactions, two ways, if you want.
Wow. No wonder being married is quite the challenge.
Yeah, or anything with two.
Anything with two people, it gets complicated. Yeah, this is a picture right here of the energy rings without coloration. This is a picture with coloration over here, and I'm quite frustrated because I'm at the top of my directory. There should be down in here. There should be a whole bunch of different meditation men, and I wonder what's taking my wow, they're not here. That's really quite interesting. If I take that, hopefully that'll, yeah, okay, good. And then I'll just take this and make it sit on top. And then I will make it translucent. And then I'll work on it later on. But this is one person over here. And then there's another person over here. And they are interrelating to each other in some kind of strange fashion, something like this, that shows that. And then I hadn't even thought of the n squared over 2, which is very n squared minus n over 2. Boy, I'll tell you. Okay, sorry to getting back to the book. Okay, and then moving to our appropriate page. We're moving to page 107. I love how he puts ink even on a blank page, which is very interesting. And I don't know why I haven't. There we go. All right. Now we're about an hour into the program and we're ready to start reading. Shall we rotate reading again? Who wants to read first?
I
Okay.
can read.
Okay.
In humanity's pursuit of harmonizing with the cosmos, establishing equilibrium and wholeness are of primary concern. Chaotic and fragmented systems yield like experience of their own making, and these are very much what we are living with in our current social, economic, political,
Sorry.
academic, medical, agricultural, environmental, and even technological systems. By understanding the qualities of wholeness in dynamic equilibrium found in the torus, we have an excellent checklist with which we can measure the integrity of our designs to bring these systems into a balanced and harmonious and therefore stable state. Each system can be seen as a toroidal flow process when viewed in its optimal operation, and all of them operating optimally together will inevitably create a profound synergistic wholeness that will naturally and quickly bring humanity into a harmonious relationship with the greater reality of life. The torus flow process is the best model for what dynamic wholeness looks like, and thanks to the innovative work of a few researchers, we have clear insight into the features that describe this flow process, which can aid the design of any and all of our essential systems and technologies.
Wonderful. I have an issue with the word balance. To me, a better word is alignment. Balance assumes some kind of weighted sense of reality, and things can be aligned and they can be out of balance when they're properly aligned. So I like the word alignment, but that's okay. Any other thoughts or comments?
Well, that's always difficult for me too now because of the far from equilibrium concept that says there's a dynamic robustness of stretch and fold. And so it's not balance in the traditional sense of balance. That's my problem is that balance now as being something that's static, stable, can gives me trouble when I see it in the context of this kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Because I see it as a different kind of balance. Even if it was said to be a dynamic balance,
Right. Yeah.
it gives you the variation of the different kinds of balances.
Yeah. As soon as
from mechanical to dynamic.
Yeah, I like that dynamic balance. Balance, immediately I see Lady Justice holding up a scale,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's in balance, right? And interesting.
I think your surfer might be the better picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly right. Cool. You want to continue reading?
Sure. As mentioned in the previous section, around the same time I met Nassim Haramein, I met another pioneer in the study of nature's fundamental patterns of wholeness and integrity, Foster Gamble. Since the age of 14, Foster has been researching both the theory and application of the principles and patterns upon which nature establishes and maintains healthy and balanced living systems. He too studied Aikido and taught it for many years and found primary inspiration in the ideas of Buckminster Fuller, as well as Arthur Young, with whom he worked closely for a time, Walter Russell, and many other researchers and innovators. Along with his wife and creative partner, Kimberly Carter Gamble, Foster created the documentary film Thrive, What on Earth Will It Take?, of which I am an associate producer. In simple terms, Thrive explores the root causes of global crises we are facing today and offers a practical path towards solutions based upon understanding and application of fundamental patterns inherent in healthy and regenerative natural systems. The two primary patterns in the Thrive Solutions model are the 12 around 1 equilibrium of the vector of the VE, the vector equilibrium, and the dynamic flow process of the torus. More than anyone I know, Foster is an advocate for the torus as the model upon which we can base the designs of our technological and social systems. There you go, Richard, in the pursuit of harmonizing with nature and the cosmos.
Just so obvious to me, and I feel ripped off that it took me this long to learn these ideas.
And I don't know exactly where, but I'm pretty sure that documentary film is available. I think if you just Google it, you'll be able to find it.
Yeah, I've watched it. It's been around for a while.
Yeah. With my early exposure to Aikido and years of personal practice with a Jo staff, a martial arts weapon made from a wooden staff about 50 inches in length, I had come to realize that the torus is indeed a primary pattern of dynamic flow. I had also been sparked by an inner vision when I was 21, which I'll describe in the next section, that inevitably led me to contemplation of nature's pattern and greater awareness of the torus. But it was upon meeting Foster and Nassim around the same time that the full import of this simple form became clear. Much of the features of dynamic wholeness that follow come from my exposure to his insights and knowledge, as well as those of Nassim, Elizabeth, Sartorius, Dwayne Elgin, and others. As you read them, keep in mind how they can be related to systems of any kind when they're in a healthy living process, rather than just describing the dynamics of a torus.
And of course, he's using the word dynamic wholeness here, which now I'm going to forgive him a little bit. He could have put dynamic balance back there too, but that's cool. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just a quick one. I was talking about Pam Colorado and indigenous science a little bit earlier. Well, Pam Colorado and Elizabeth Sartorius were really good colleagues, and I think Elizabeth was part of the group that got together to found the um, the Indigenous Science Network. And she was a colleague of James Lovelock, and I think maybe even Lynn Margulies on the whole Gaia theory and the Gaia understanding of everything is alive. So it's just
Wow.
interesting to see out of the earlier discussion and the use of names, and then all of a sudden here's Elizabeth's name pops up.
How wonderful, Richard. Thank you for sharing that. And you know, I was studying, Joe and I have had this conversation about Gladiator, the Gladiator movie, Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2. And I've been studying a little bit about Marcus Aurelius, and evidently he had this, uh, it was a Hellenistic belief that everything's alive, that Marcus Aurelius had that. And so evidently Marcus Aurelius had the everything alive. And I think the Romans got it from the Greeks, who got it from the Egyptians. And
And some of them got it from the Indians.
yeah, yeah. And so everything is alive and everything's in its process, and everything, because it's alive, therefore becomes sacred. And so then a Western brain, a Cartesian brain goes in and says, well, these Aborigines worship the sun. They worship the buffalo, you know, uh, and uh, and a Cartesian brain seems to have no concept of the interrelationship between the buffalo and the planet as a whole and the universe as a thriving system of life. And what part of it is not alive? I mean, if one ponders that, one can go crazy. Okay. Here comes Susan on her iPhone. So she's in transition. And Anne is back.
Yeah, actually, I'm here actually. Just that, never mind, I'll talk about that later.
Say what?
I'm here actually. Except just now I stepped out for a bit to collect something from a delivery guy. Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm.
So I'll read for a second if that's okay. Feature.
Sure.
A torus is made from the medium in which it exists. A torus is made from the medium in which it exists. A torus is a dynamic flow process, not an object. It is an organized and coherent movement of energy within a given medium. A smoke ring is a good example. What's that? Okay, good. And now suddenly Richard's missing off my thing. Oh, there he is. Yeah, he's there. A bubble ring in water is very similar, being made of a swirling circle of water with air inside. It maintains its shape with remarkable definition and even exhibits the quality of moving through water sideways without immediately rising to the surface, as is the case with regular bubbles in water. A hurricane is composed of air, water temperature, and pressure, all combined to form a coherent and highly stable spinning structure. In these cases, the dynamic flow of the torus is clearly visible. In others, such as in apples, oranges, cacti, trees, even humans, as presence is more tangibly represented by the structure, shape, and surface patterns of the objects, as well as the less visible energy flows that inform and integrate them, i.e., sunlight, water, and water intake and respiration in plants. Food and elimination of cycles in animals. In still other cases, it's the dynamic process of a whole system that exhibits torus flow. Such is found in ecosystems, water cycles, weather patterns, biological systems, etc. The torus pattern is evident, yet it is made up of the specific medium in which it is present. From a design perspective, the flow process of a torus can be conceptually applied in any dynamic system as to most closely align that system with nature's patterns of coherent wholeness. Imagine an economic system that is modeled on toroidal flows, for example. Now, it seems to me that this is a almost perfect paragraph. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I'm going to say it's almost perfect. This is the paragraph that I wanted to see when I was in elementary school. And if I had seen this paragraph right here, I would have realized that even the air around me is moving in a toroidal pattern, and I don't see it. And realizing that everything is moving in this toroidal, omnidirectional, Mobius hemispherical interrelationship, just a powerful vision of reality. Wow, that is so cool. Any other comments or questions? What a beautiful
No, I agree. Yeah,
paragraph.
and especially being able to connect it to things like the structure of the apple and so forth.
Right.
And to be able to compare back and forth between, oh, I can see the toroidal sort of makeup of an apple when I cut it in half. And then to be able to make that connection to what I'm in myself vis-a-vis an invisible sort of omnidirectional sort of flow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy for me to imagine myself as the seed in an apple core, right? Anyway. Okay, feature. A torus is self-generating and sustaining. The simultaneous outward-inward flow of a torus is the key dynamic that defines and sustains its form. When the energy in a system becomes too weak and this dynamic no longer functions with sufficient continuity, the system inevitably collapses. This is obvious when we watch a smoke ring slowly decrease its toroidal spin to a point at which it suddenly dissolves and the smoke dissipates more randomly into the air. The same principle applies to the integrity of an ecosystem. If the in and out flows of a system, such as sunlight and water in plants or viable food supplies in a habitat, become too diminished, the health and sustainability of the system deteriorates. An economic system is really no different. A healthy living system always displays self-generative attributes of a torus flow process. Wow. Do I like that? Who else wants to read?
Okay, I'll take it on.
Okay.
Okay. Feature. Information and resources are distributed throughout the whole system. A toroidal flow process has integrity when the movement of energy is present throughout the whole system. Put your finger in a part of a smoke ring and it will immediately lose its circular shape and disperse into the surrounding air. This is because the disruption of flow in one area affects the integrity of the whole. There is no 50% operational torus where the top half is fine, but the bottom is not. It's 100% or it falls apart. This would ultimately hold true for the atmospheric and ocean currents on Earth. For example, too much pollution in either may ultimately affect its toroidal circulation, compromising the integrity of those systems. When the dynamic flow of energy is seen as information and resources, it's easy to see how quickly a system can collapse when the integrity of its wholeness is compromised by impediment or constriction. Conversely, it's also easy to see how readily a system will come into balanced wholeness when information and resources are flowing freely throughout the whole system. In our present day, nearly every essential system of human endeavor is operating with impediment and constriction rather than a balanced distribution throughout the whole. It's not hard to see how belief and action based on domination and control for maintaining one's personal and cultural survival has set these compromised dynamics in place. shifting our worldview to one where wholeness is primary at all scales, from individual, family, community, region to continental and global. It's imperative to establishing healthy living systems and the distribution of information and resources throughout is a key to engendering this shift. Shifting our worldview to one where wholeness is primary. Okay, so repeat. Okay. Do you want to pause or continue?
Well, I'm loving this. In fact, I'm challenging myself now to make a memory peg, a mnemonic of all of this stuff. And I'll discuss it in just a second because these are critical aspects of Tori and a great summary. Is everybody else having that same experience?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you could just plant this in the middle of the United Nations or in the middle of,
Yeah.
and please read and reread and reread and tell us what we have to do to make this happen.
Yes. And please tell us how what you just said interrelates with this Toral concept.
Yeah.
You know, because as soon as I anticipate a word that comes out of my mouth and that it exists in this environment, that becomes really cool.
Yeah. And when you see that, when those two words are so powerful, impediment and constriction.
Yeah.
And whether you apply it at the individual level or the political or nation level. Yeah.
And you know what? Those are kind of fairly polite words that don't trigger Republic versus Democrat sentiment necessarily. And yet it's true on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Where are
I mean,
those
you'd like to sort of, well, in the group you're talking about, but it could be any group, it's almost like this is the morning read. This is what we all have to sort of read and reflect on at the beginning of every day.
Yeah.
And as we close out the evening of every day.
Where are those two words? I'm sorry that didn't capture those two words. Where are they?
Well, it's about 5 or 6 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph. So that every essential system of human behavior is operating with impediment and constriction.
Okay, let's see here.
Rather than a balanced distribution throughout the whole. And, we're already editing that paragraph a little bit by saying that a dynamic balanced distribution.
Oh, there it is, with impediment and constriction. Yeah. Every essential system of human endeavor is operating with impediment and constriction rather than a balanced distribution throughout the whole. In fact, he's
then
using
the next sentence.
Yeah, it's not hard to see how belief and action based on domination and control for maintaining one's personal and cultural survival has yet these compromised dynamics in place. Yeah, that's profound. Yeah. And it applies across the board, doesn't it? As Susan pointed out. Great. Okay, any more comments? Want to continue reading, Anne?
Okay. Feature feedback is intrinsic. As described in chapter 16, the flow process of a torus exhibits a reciprocating cycle from center point, outward expansion distribution throughout the toroidal field, and return back into the center point. This is exactly the nature of a feedback loop, and it is in some ways the most important attribute of a torus and of the nature of the cosmos as a whole. A feedback loop occurs when energy or information is expressed outwardly from a source and returns into that source to be fed back through the system again. An obvious and sometimes painful example of a feedback loop is the intense screech of an audio sound system when a microphone is placed in front of a speaker. Sound is picked up by the mic, amplified through the speaker, then picked up by the mic again and fed back into the speaker. In a fraction of a second, this feedback cycle goes from 0 to excruciating as a high-pitched squeal causes everyone in nearby proximity to cover their ears as quickly as possible. As not fun as this is, it's a great example of the presence and power of a feedback loop gone wild. Unfortunately, nature's feedback loops are more manageable in general, though they too can spin up quickly, such as in the cases of tornadoes and hurricanes. As it turns out, feedback is intrinsic to the dynamic functioning of the entire cosmic phenomenon. In chapter 11, we briefly touched into the hologramic nature of protons and how the information inside them is equal to the information outside them. Unified physics proposes that the information of every proton, location, atomic and molecular interactions, angular momentum, etc., is present within each proton, and they're all communicating instantaneously through a universal wormhole network that connects them through the PSU ether field. The local characteristics of an individual proton are radiated out to inform the whole, which then incorporates this information in relationship to all protons simultaneously. And then the information of the whole is fed back into the originating proton, which then adapts its behavior according to the feedback of the whole. Nassim Haramein calls this a feedback or feed-forward loop. This holofractal dynamic is happening at every scale of physical manifestation, as every manifestity is composed of an aggregate of protons within atoms, within molecules, etc. As such, a dynamic feedback loop is intrinsic to the entire cosmic experience, which makes sense when we consider that it's highly likely that such a mechanism would be present within the seamlessly integrated whole system we call universe. While this may challenge the ideas of reductionist scientists who hold that randomness is intrinsic and there is no such higher level function of order, it's not too surprising that it would be overlooked when analysis is focused on parts, fundamental particles, rather than wholes, fundamental patterns.
Let's pause
Almost
just for a
done?
second.
Mm.
Was there another comment there?
There's only one last 3 lines to go.
Yeah, let's finish the,
Oh,
no, there,
sorry, no, it's longer.
it goes quite a bit. I wanted to comment on it. Again, I'm so critical and I appreciate Lefert and all he's doing, but his feature, the title here is feedback is intrinsic, and then he explains feedback, feed forward. I think if he'd have put feedback, feed forward in his title of here as a feature, it would have been more explicit and more profound, I think, because everybody's used to feedback, but it's also feed forward, and that is unique. Also, when he talks about the speaker, the sound of a speaker, and the way the sound comes out of the speaker, I have a really great slide that I'm not going to be able to find because my computer resource is working so slowly. But I was listening to a Jane 108 workshop, and I saved that video and I sent it to all of you. And I even saved the video down to I think I created it on YouTube and created a YouTube link and a private link so that we could all share it. But in there, he talks about the torus and he shows an actual dissection of a whale song. And when the sound comes out of a whale, it's tori all the way out. The sound doesn't come out like we picture a concave, if you look on your computer and you look at the speaker button, there's usually a couple of concave lines that come out of there. It's tori all the way out. There's tori inside of it, creating the subtones. There's tori outside of it, creating the overtones. and there's tori inside of it creating the tone, and that whale tone is coming out. He could easily say that the sound itself is moving through space in a tonal fashion. And to see the picture of that is profound. I'm going to look for that picture and I'll show it to you
Wow.
next time we talk.
That sounds great, Steve.
Yeah.
And I'll be picky on one word at the very last sentence. And he says that it would be overlooked when analysis, that's the word, is focused on parts, fundamental particles, rather than wholes. And this is my trouble with the language, the word of analysis, being attached to the notion of breaking down things into their independent parts, find out about them, add them all back up, and you get the whole. So analysis applies to the focus on the parts, but analysis is not, to me, the correct word when you focus on the wholes, because you're not analyzing. Whether it's synthesizing or there's something about analysis that keeps perpetuating the notion that if you break the whole down into its separate parts, and and through your knowledge of those parts, you add them all back up, you have the sum of the parts equals the whole.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. There's something anal about analysis.
But remember, this is a dual. You don't get to have integration without derivation. And there
Right.
is a depth of understanding that comes with each part of this. And it's something I've had to fight in my own. So whenever I get that instinct of like good, bad, I know I've all of a sudden been pushed up against a false dichotomy. Because there is going to be richness in both sides. And so as much as I want to be frustrated with myself for that spinning down into the smaller fractals of appreciation of observation, it is also necessary as humans that's the only way that I can possibly try to validate that I have an appreciation, understanding of the wholeness as well. So if Steve and I come up, over this beautiful flower, and when I can talk to him about the particular type of pink that I'm seeing and the smell and the texture, those are all attributes and they're smaller fractals of that bigger reality. But if we see that we have convergence of appreciation around those smaller parts, that's my best hope for thinking that possibly we could have some convergence around a true, more fully integrated experience. So I know I want myself to get to the wholeness appreciation part. That's something I want to do better, because I feel like my whole life I've been taught to go the other direction. But it doesn't make the other direction bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something I keep having to remind myself about.
And Susan, you said the word integration in that process, and I think that, and there may be a better word. Richard's talked about a synergy, which is probably a better word, but I think that analysis needs to be coupled with either integration, analysis slash integration as a dual, or maybe analysis and synergetic analysis. And what's the integration? Integrate.
Integration and derivative are the dual that I was moving
Yeah.
over to, because
Yeah.
that one I actually have a mechanistic and mathematical appreciation for as a duality.
Yeah.
So analysis, I can see about getting into the computer here and figuring out if there's a better antonym.
Yeah. Integration and derivative. Yeah.
So those are mathematical functions that are dual.
And I like the derivative idea because derivative is multifaceted. It's not like if a thing is derivative, it's derived and has an interrelationship. The word
Yes.
derivative to me means interrelationship. It's intrinsic in that quality. So
And
yeah,
it's the
go ahead.
most simple form of that process. I love Manu saying, take whatever you're looking at, divide it in half.
Yeah,
Period. And then just do that all the way around. That's a derivative. And then when I think in financial terms, I think about oranges, orange juice concentrate from the commodities market.
Yeah.
And there's so much of what we do in life where we're working with the derivative of the thing rather than the fully integrated whole. And yet sometimes it's the only way we can grab onto stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to remember that once I have a derivative, it came from someplace and interrelates
Yes.
with a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, derivative is a very good word. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Okay. Who wants to continue reading?
I'll just finish it. Would that be
Cool.
okay?
Yeah,
Sure.
great. Thank you.
Welcome. The torus is a fundamental pattern of wholeness as a flow process that exhibits a reciprocal out-in exchange of energy, matter, information, fractally embedded across all scales, micro to macro. The feed-forward mechanism maintains cosmic integrity as galaxies, stars, planets, humans, cells, atoms share a nested toroidal flow, coordinating local conditions at each scale with universal conditions throughout all scales. Imagine applying this idea to something like our modern day media systems. Presently, our mainstream media channels are pretty much a highly filtered one-way agenda, the primary feedback of which is called consumerism. The internet, on the other hand, is very close to achieving this idea. Yet there are impediments and constrictions imposed. Yeah.
So much.
Yes, imposed by both the quest for control and dominance, as well as the lack of a clear model of harmonious wholeness that inhibit its fulfillment. Fortunately, there are innovators who understand this model of wholeness, actively seeking to design new systems that can bring the media into alignment with this cosmic feed-forward principle. It's easy to see how profound a shift it will bring for the advancement of humankind and our relationship to life on Earth and beyond, when we have an accurate and ongoing feedback mechanism in place. This feature of intrinsic feedback is closely related to the concept of reciprocal relation between the implicate and explicit orders as proposed by physicist David Bohm, which we'll explore in the next chapter. Pause there.
Comments, questions?
Yeah. Again, being picky on words.
Yeah.
My word out of that reading, the picky word is mechanism.
Yeah.
And how we still find a mechanical word to explain something that we've been trying to say is non-mechanical.
Yeah.
And it's like in the human relations work, we talk about defense mechanisms, and we talk about all kinds of different mechanical related ideas to explain the dynamics of non-mechanics.
Yeah.
And yeah, and again in my work, which is very frustrating now with a better understanding of wholeness and the importance of relationships, is that everybody thinks that they're onto something new and innovative when they say we are now person-centered, family-centered, something-centered. Everything is centered on the entity and not on the relationship. And yet we keep putting out new ways of trying to be helpful to people by saying we have a new a newly invented centeredness, which is focused on the node or the entity and not on the connection in between.
The entities, yeah. I love the fact that here he uses the cosmic feedback / feed forward principle. Seems to me the word feedback should not even appear without a / feed forward. Until we invent a word that means both, that's really critical. And he got my hopes up so high here. And then, as Richard pointed out, he ended up with ongoing feedback mechanism. It's like, oh, we're almost talking about reality, and we flop back into the normal paradigm again. And I just, my brain wants to stay where it was. And feedback mechanism is one of those mechanisms that help it stay there. Okay, cool. We're going to pause right now, and we have one more feature, though, I'd like to read just to make sure, because this is the last feature of a torus, and I'm going to ponder about creating a memory peg on this whole thing, because features of the torus are really profound. The final feature is a torus is both autonomous and integrated in its environment. Ooh, I really like that. Which is some of the ideas we've been talking about how his language here, or how the language most people use, and I'm sure he's using it to do what he can to relate to the average reader, how language lets us down. But those two are great duals, autonomous and integrated. And then you used integrated and derivative. That's interesting, Susan. So we can think about that. Any other questions or comments before we shut it down and go to our close? Okay, wonderful. Susan, how are you feeling? I'm glad you were able to stay with us as long as you have. How are you feeling, and what are your takeaways today?
I'm feeling pulled back in. I love getting into deeper perception, and just so that I'm being honest with you guys, I have made a commitment to do my very, very best to see the sunrise as many of my human days as possible to advantage my mind and my body. So that's why I shifted over to the phone so I could walk outside and get a little bit of early morning sun rays on me. And I don't mean to be disruptive. I remember way back, like maybe in the first group when we were doing critical path together, in like 2007, 8, 9, looking at feedback and feed forward and understanding, having an appreciation for that mechanism. And so many times I neglect the feed forward aspect because it wasn't something that was taught to me in regular school. And yet when I look at why I believe so deeply in optimism, I would say I think that's actually the way I see it working. I've had some other stresses come up in my life, as we all do, with people being ill in my personal circle. And it is so tempting to spiral into the difficulties. And, talking with some other dear friends, the advice was go for your highest energy. Just really, really concentrate there. And it's like, okay, remember, push the optimism button. Because that is me looking to feed forward in this situation. And so I want to have this deeper understanding of the toroidal flow that is going on in my special case scenario universe. And how are you feeling, and what are you taking away?
Kate, actually, you talked about optimism, right, Susan? And I think this chapter, on the Taurus, it's got a lot of elements that actually points to the universe being naturally optimistic. Yeah. The part about Taurus being self-generating and sustaining, right? Talking about ecosystems that are self-generating, and the fact that the economic system is really no different. A healthy living system always displays self-generative attributes of a Taurus flow process, you know. So only if, you know, I wish our politicians and those who work on the financial and economic systems really understand this, because they always come from the space of scarcity and you know, and lack. And because of that, the way they solve the problem will not be solved, because it just it's not, nature doesn't work that way. Yeah. And the other thing about Taurus being, for it to work, it has to be 100% and nothing less than 100%. Yeah. That really resonates with me. Things falling apart if you don't hold 100% integrity, you know. The other one, Richard, thinking about what you said about, you know, that the focus is on people centered and so on, and it's not focusing on the relation part. Yeah, actually, just because the person is, or the thing is obvious and clear, and then the relationship in between is not seen, just most people don't even they're not even aware it's there. Yeah. So I really like what you said about that one. The last bit was just now, you know, we were talking about the assisted living or assisted dying. Yeah. Well, if you're looking at coming from the space of optimism, then you know what? The way the future is going is easy to live. I like to look at that way, longer. Yeah. More because the, what do you call it? Even scientists, people like Dr. Michio Kaku in his book, they talk about human beings being able to live double our lifespan, and even in that chapter alone, he talks about what's happening in labs, and the fact that we are going to be living healthier and staying younger for a lot longer than, I mean, you know, that's why the 60 is the new 40, you know, that those kind of statements come about. Yeah. And so yeah, I think that's I'm gonna just pause there, and to Richard. Richard hasn't gone yet, right?
Right.
Okay. Richard, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Well, I guess I'm still, after 2 hours, I'm still feeling my life has gone sideways on me. I don't understand what happened, and I can't find a mechanism to sort of straighten it. But yeah, I mean, Susan really helped me realize again the two sides, so that you don't try and displace one side with the other. That there's always the two sides, and even in that sense, I was just thinking about this assistance, where something like, say, a disease assists us in a direction that we don't really want to go, but it's what's getting us there. On the other hand, you have in this case, let's say a medical person who has got interested in this particular sort of disease and has studied it in such a way that they can now be of assistance to someone like me who might be being assisted the other side. And we can find that dynamic balance where the disease may still assist me to a dying place that I wasn't sort of looking forward to, but somebody else has assisted me in being well with that as long as I possibly can. And so the duality of assistance is at play all the time. And the other thing that I got out of it, which reinforcing for me, is again, intellectually, I can still sort of challenge the language of mechanism because it ties us back into that other paradigm. But I also see its benefit. And I had that happen to me when I was working with the idea of students in my field, if they went out into a practicum and somebody subjectively decided that they weren't very good at relationships with patients or clients, that person could fire the student, in other words, fail them. And it didn't matter whether they were A students and everything else, that particular failure would ruin their chance to continue on in that study. And so I got thinking, oh my God, and I was in an administrative role, a deanship role, and had to take the desperation, if you want, the devastation of a student saying, I've just been kicked out of what I wanted to be. And so I went looking for the mechanism that understands why is a relationship so important. And that's when I discovered reciprocity and the duality of the zigzag, the moving back and forth in order to create a processional movement that's 90 degrees or perpendicular to the axis of the relationship. All of a sudden, okay, now I know the mechanics of why relationships are so important. And I could put the two together to be helpful in a classroom environment or even in my own understanding. So thank you, Susan. That, I mean, just always keeping in mind the two sides. And stay on, if you want, the optimism of both in terms of how they can be helpful. Steve, over to you, and how are you feeling, and what's your takeaway?
Well, I'm humbled because it's easy for me to pick Lefferts words, pick on his words, but he got the book written. And so I need to relax and just put out my book and realize that not every word's going to be freaking perfect in the book, which really frustrates me. Boy, do I love this whole concept of, we've discussed 4 of the 5 elements of a torus. And while the hop vibration that I showed you guys, it's so interesting that I jumped into that and showed you all those visuals before we even started this. But I was just taking off of the threads of the last chapter. It's just cool to see that the hop vibration is made of a bunch of fractal hop vibrations, and these words that he's describing here come pretty close to putting words on what I'm experiencing in that model. I just really excited about this. I'm going to spend some time on this and see what I can do about it. Just like Soviet P, I kind of have an understanding of precession. I think I'm going to I'm going to put something together on this so that I have some understanding of how toral energy works. It is freaking everywhere, and I'm gonna find the picture of the whale sound and all the spiral and toral interrelationships as that sound moves through space. And of course, just like any sound, it starts out stronger and then gets weaker and weaker because some of those toral aspects of the vibration tend to fade as they move out because they're not as strong as they were when they from their source. What a powerful picture that was. I'm frustrated I couldn't put my finger on it, and it is. But in fact, I'll find the video, in fact, and I'll put a link on the video and send it all to you guys, and maybe stick it in the invitation too. All right, so
Steve, was that part of the Jane 108 lecture you were referencing?
yes, it was.
And when you say Jane, you mean like the
Yes, the
East
dude.
Indian religion, Jane?
No, I mean, that the white guy who is called Jane 108.
Oh, okay, so here's a stable datum for us, because when you said,
Okay.
I have a
Yeah.
friend who went through a whole Jane initiation and got her
Ah,
name changed, but Jane 108 is just a moniker.
yeah, it's a moniker for a dude. That's his AKA. He gives seminars on sacred geometry under that moniker.
The other place that I need to get back to that I had looked at before was the Vesica Institute. And that is circling back into my universe through some podcast pieces on circadian biology. But this is somebody who has the Vesica Institute has courses and products and things that are associated with sacred geometry. And that's where I was looking to get the sculpture of, oh my gosh, what was the crystal that we were, Janisa crystal, to have in my home / garden.
Hmm.
So I need to get, I lost that thread a while back and it's coming around again.
Cool. I have found what I can't find. Oh, there it is. I'm just not used to these, but I'm gonna put Jane 108. I found his webpage here, and I'm gonna put that in the chat. And I'm going to also show it here on the screen. And I wish my so here's Mathematics and Logic. Here's Jane 108 Academy.
Okay.
And then this is I have he doesn't have it showing here. The True Da Vinci Codes, Jane 108 Academy, Instagram photos and videos. Water's 108-degree angle as a superstructure. Jane explains Eric Weinstein and Terrence Howard conversation.
Wow. Okay. And he likes
With
cats.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So
One of those
anyway,
looks a lot like Stanley.
Yes, yes. And right in the center.
Yeah, that's him.
yeah. Well, he's selling a perfect fleece blanket for cat lovers. So I don't know. Maybe we should stay away from there. Sacred Geometry online course. So he's really good. And how did I get my name 108? So I don't know where his Jane came from, but he describes as 108. So that link is in the thing, and I'm going to find his. I'm sure I saved the audio because it was just too valuable. It was an introductory, like a 15-minute introductory seminar to his sacred geometry master class. And I just thought that the introduction was so profound that I saved it. So I'll make sure I find it and send it to y'all.
And Steve, he's spelling Jane the way that the Jain religion would be spelled.
Yeah, that's why, and I didn't comment on it because, yeah, I was familiar with Jain religion.
And I just pulled up the Vesica Institute that's founded by Dr. Gilbert, known for his deep understanding of the Rosicrucian and Holy Grail traditions as
Oh, wow.
living streams of spiritual initiation.
Yeah, I've showed you guys the Rosicrucian vibrational chart that goes around. It starts with it, and it shows squares of squares of squares of squares of squares, and finally has the electromagnetic spectrum in it. That's really powerful. Well, thank you all very much. It's 8:01, so we're pretty close to our appointed time, 8:01 here in Mountain America. And the sun is just starting to pierce through the fog that we had this morning. So anyway, that's cool. And I hope Wayne and Joe and Manu and Raffers and Kelly are able to listen to this profound conversation and critique of one of the most enlightened treatises on Torah yet I've incurred. So come upon. Thank you all very much.
Love
Anybody,
you.
any last words? Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone.
See you
Bye.
next week.
Bye-bye.